Now, Laetitia Bader is a Human Rights Watch director for the Horn of Africa. She joins us now for more on this. Laetitia, thanks so much for your time for TRT World. As I just mentioned there with Samuel, the investigation has been carried out by the Ethiopia's Human Rights Commission. Well, this is the organization that has already been criticized by the Amnesty International. Will they be able to resist the pressure from the Ethiopian government and look into this? How reliable will be this investigation?
Well, I mean, I think it's very early to say. I mean, they will obviously be operating both in terms of their access in an incredibly difficult situation. I think, as Samuel was just pointing out, we are still talking about a region, the Tigray region, where communications are completely shut off, which makes it incredibly difficult, not only for human rights organizations like ours, but also for the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, if they are trying to access information at the moment, to really be able to dig into what is happening. But as you can imagine, I mean, this is also a context in which families, relatives of people from the Tigray region are not able to communicate with their loved ones at the moment. But absolutely, I mean, we have also received credible reports of a number of killings of local populations on November the 9th. It is absolutely essential that all actors involved in the tensions at the moment are creating a context in which independent reporting and investigations can happen. And that's absolutely essential and necessary. And this is obviously important also in terms of humanitarian assessments. Right now, the humanitarian community still don't have access. Roads are still shut off, as are air access to the Tigray region. And I think it's important to highlight, I mean, the Tigray region, even before the recent tensions, was an area where there was need for humanitarian assistance on an ongoing basis. So to prevent what could be a very rapidly humanitarian crisis from evolving, it's absolutely essential for the federal government in Ethiopia to ensure that there is access to the humanitarian community as well.
And what can be done at this point by the NGOs and the international community to get more information about what is actually happening in Tigray region? What can be done by organizations like Human Rights Watch at this moment to prevent further escalation?
Well, as I just pointed out, it is incredibly difficult right now. And obviously, I mean, once again, why it is so important for the communication shutdown to be lifted so that stories and voices can come out, so that we really have a picture of the scale of the problem. Now, of course, as Samuel was pointing out, there are thousands of individuals from the region, many of them children, who have been arriving in Sudan. I mean, it's important to point out the parts of Sudan where they are crossing the border into is an area where there is already a very significant Eritrean refugee population. I mean, this is a very volatile region in itself, which has seen intercommunal violence over the last year. So we once again, I mean, we really are talking about new arrivals in this very volatile area, but we are starting to receive some information which is trickling out over, you know, a lot of the horrors that these people have been seeing back home. But it's still very early, and yet those stories are absolutely essential. Also, in order for the humanitarian community to assess the needs, medical, food, etc., for those in the Tigray region.
And we already have people arriving in Sudan telling stories that are quite horrifying. So at least this is giving us some kind of feedback and information on what's going on. But I know you already mentioned the situation in Sudan. They're already struggling with Eritrean refugees and also with thousands of those that already escaped Tigray region. Can you give us more details on that? What is exactly that they need? What is the urgency there in Sudan at this moment?
I think it's very early to say. I mean, obviously, humanitarian organizations have been raising the alarm bell. It appears that many of the humanitarian organizations are trying to scale up their capacity to support. Obviously, Sudan has its own refugee commission, which has been trying so far to at least identify new arrivals. So it's very early to say, but it does seem that there is a humanitarian effort to help those at least making it to Sudan. But obviously, what needs to happen, at the same time is that humanitarian access needs to be really increased inside the Tigray region itself so that people aren't being forced to flee outside the country in order to access humanitarian assistance.
Okay, Laetitia, Bahir, thanks so much for that. I know that you and your organization also are struggling to find more information about Tigray region. But thank you so much for that update for us here at TRT World.